I met him at a time when I wasn't looking for anything. Not love. Not connection. Not even distraction. I had learned the hard way that wanting too much only leaves you empty-handed. So I kept my world small. Predictable. Safe. He didn't try to impress me. He didn't flirt. Didn't linger. He spoke when necessary and disappeared when things felt too close. And somehow, that made him impossible to ignore. The first time we talked, he said something that stuck with me. "I'm not good at staying," he admitted, like it was a warning instead of a confession. I smiled and told him that was fine. I wasn't looking for someone to stay anyway. That was my first mistake, believing my own words. He never crossed lines. He stood just close enough to be felt, but never close enough to be held. When our hands brushed, he pulled back. When conversations turned personal, he changed the subject. It should have made things easy. It should have kept me detached. Instead, I found myself paying attention to the details. The way he listened without interrupting. The way his voice dropped when he was tired. The way he looked at me like he was memorizing something he didn't plan to keep. One night, I asked him why he kept everyone at a distance. He didn't answer right away. "Some things don't leave quietly," he said. "They take parts of you with them." I didn't ask him to explain. I told myself it wasn't my place. But curiosity has a way of growing in silence. The closeness happened slowly. So slowly that I didn't notice when distance stopped protecting me. We spent hours together without touching, without labels, without expectations. Or so I thought. I started missing him before he left. Started imagining conversations that hadn't happened yet. Started wondering what it would feel like if he ever let himself fall. That scared me. I reminded myself of his warning. I'm not good at staying. Still, when he looked at me like I was something fragile instead of temporary, I let myself hope. Just a little. Just enough to hurt later. Because deep down, I knew the truth before I admitted it. People who are afraid of staying often leave the deepest marks. I noticed the shift before it happened. The way his messages became shorter. The pauses between them longer. It wasn't distance, not exactly. It was hesitation. Like he was weighing every word, every moment, afraid of what they might turn into. When I asked if everything was okay, he smiled and said yes. But his eyes didn't agree. "I don't want to mess this up," he said one evening, staring somewhere past my shoulder. I should have asked what this meant. Instead, I nodded. I was getting good at pretending I didn't want answers. That night, when he hugged me goodbye, he held on for a second longer than usual. Long enough to feel intentional. Long enough to make my chest ache. I stood there after he left, realizing something had already changed. Whatever we were avoiding was starting to matter. He began showing up unexpectedly. Not with explanations. Just presence. Quiet, steady, confusing. He'd sit beside me without touching, close enough for me to feel his warmth, far enough to remind me of the rules we never discussed but both obeyed. One afternoon, I caught him watching me with an expression I hadn't seen before. Soft. Almost sad. "What?" I asked. "Nothing," he replied too quickly. But it wasn't nothing. It was the look of someone standing at the edge of a decision they were afraid to make. I wanted to tell him that staying didn't have to mean losing yourself. That loving someone didn't automatically rewrite the ending. But people don't heal on demand. And love doesn't convince, it waits. The first time he kissed me, it wasn't planned. It happened in the quiet space between words, when neither of us was thinking clearly enough to stop it. His hand hesitated before touching my face, like he was asking permission without speaking. The kiss was brief, careful. And when he pulled away, he looked terrified. "I'm sorry," he said immediately. I didn't know what hurt more, the apology, or the way he stepped back like he'd crossed a line he couldn't uncross. "I meant it," I told him softly. He closed his eyes, like that made it easier to leave. "I can't," he said. "Not like this." And for the first time, I understood. His fear wasn't of loving me. It was of becoming someone he no longer recognized. After that, everything felt quieter. Not empty, restrained. Like we were both holding our breath, afraid that the smallest movement would make everything collapse. He didn't disappear. He didn't pull away completely. But something careful settled between us. I caught myself replaying the kiss in my mind. Not the way it felt, but the way he looked after. Like he'd just confirmed his worst fear. I wanted to tell him that he didn't break anything. That I was still here. But wanting someone to stay doesn't give you the right to ask them to. So I stayed silent. And silence, I learned, can sound a lot like permission. He finally spoke the truth on a night that felt too calm to hold it. We were sitting across from each other, the space between us filled with everything we hadn't said. He looked tired. Not physically, emotionally. "I don't trust myself," he said quietly. "I don't know how to love without losing control." I waited. Didn't interrupt. Didn't rush him. "When I care," he continued, "I disappear. I shut down. And the people who matter most, they end up feeling alone." His words landed heavier than any confession. Because I could already feel it happening. "I don't want to do that to you," he finished. I swallowed and nodded, even though my chest hurt. He wasn't warning me anymore. He was asking me to step back. That's when I realized how deeply I was already involved. Because stepping back felt like erasing myself from something that had quietly become home. I told myself I could handle it. That loving someone didn't mean demanding more than they could give. That staying distant might be the price of staying at all. But love doesn't work on logic. It works on presence. And absence. Every time he pulled away, I felt it. Every time he stayed, I hoped too much. And hope, when left unattended, turns into expectation. I didn't ask him to choose me. I asked myself how long I could choose this. And the answer scared me. Because the longer I stayed, the more I realized I was the only one willing to risk getting hurt. The breaking point didn't come with an argument. It came with a realization, quiet, heavy, unavoidable. I was changing. Not in the dramatic way people notice, but in the small ways that add up. I stopped asking questions. Stopped reaching first. Stopped expecting warmth where it had never been promised. He noticed. "You're different," he said one evening, his voice uncertain. "I'm adapting," I replied. The word tasted bitter. Adaptation wasn't growth, it was survival. And I was getting very good at surviving something that was slowly hollowing me out. For the first time, I wondered if loving him meant losing myself completely. The truth surfaced when I least expected it. Not from him, from someone who knew him before I did. A passing comment. A name I didn't recognize. A story cut short the moment he realized I was listening. Later that night, I asked him, He didn't deny it. I left someone once, he admitted. Not because I didn't love her. Because I loved her too much and panicked. The words sank deep. This wasn't about fear of love. It was fear of responsibility. Of staying long enough to fail. I don't want to repeat that, he said. I nodded slowly, realizing the painful truth. He wasn't protecting me. He was protecting himself from becoming the villain in his own story again. I stopped pretending after that. Stopped telling myself patience was the same as strength. Stopped calling emotional absence space. Because naming something doesn't make it kinder. I can't keep shrinking, I told him quietly. Not for love. He looked at me like he finally understood the cost of his fear. Like he saw the damage only once it had a face. I don't know how to stay, he said. I know, I replied. But I do. And in that moment, the choice became clear. Not dramatic. Not cruel. Just honest. Sometimes love isn't about holding on harder. It's about knowing when staying means breaking yourself. And I wasn't willing to disappear to make him comfortable anymore. I walked away without anger. That surprised both of us. There were no accusations, no final speeches. Just a quiet understanding that loving someone doesn't obligate you to endure what hurts you. I left because staying had started to feel like betrayal of myself. For a while, the silence was unbearable. I reached for my phone out of habit, then remembered there was nothing left to say. Healing doesn't announce itself. It starts small, in moments when you choose yourself without guilt. Weeks passed. Then months. I learned that missing someone doesn't mean you made the wrong choice. It just means what you felt was real. He came back when I wasn't expecting him to. Not dramatically. Not apologizing. Just honest in a way he'd never been before. I stayed this time, he said. With myself. He told me about the work he'd done. The fear he'd finally faced. The nights he wanted to disappear and didn't. He didn't ask for another chance. He didn't promise anything. He just told the truth. I listened. Not because I owed him that, but because I wanted to hear who he'd become when he stopped running. I don't know what I can give you, he admitted. I looked at him and realized something important. This time, I wasn't afraid of the answer. We didn't rush back into anything. We didn't pretend the past hadn't happened. What we did was different, quieter, steadier, built on presence instead of fear. Love didn't suddenly become easy. But it became mutual. I learned that staying isn't about never leaving. It's about returning, changed. And he learned that fear doesn't disappear when you avoid it. It only loosens its grip when you face it. This wasn't a perfect ending. It wasn't meant to be. It was two people choosing honesty over comfort. Growth over familiarity. And love that stayed, not because it was safe, but because it was finally ready. And this time, so was I.